Hi, everyone. Welcome to New Mexico Author Chat. I'm Joe Poole, and I have been making videos. Some of you have been following me on my journey here, my writing journey. Some interesting background into what's happened with my characters in my first book, uh, Great Train Robbery. Sort of just the working title. And last week, I kind of branched off into how I was developing characters, where the ideas for some of the characters came from. But this week's video, so so after talking about my experiences of coming up with characters and how I came about those characters, this week's video is going to talk about different author approaches to writing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do and some advantages and disadvantages that what I have found, plus, what World Wide Web tells us is the best. So there's three types of approaches to writing. One is called the plotter, kind of makes sense. Other one is called the pantser, which turns out that's kind of what I am, and the plantser. What I've discovered by researching these topics has been that I think it also depends on what you're writing, where your inspiration came from, and how you want to get your ideas out there. So for the plotter, that's the person who basically plans out every aspect of the. So the plotter plans out every aspect of the book. And some of the programs that are out there that allow you to write books online will help you plan it out. The program that I'm using, Reedsy, again, not a paid endorsement here, um, allows me to break the story up into 3 acts. Kind of takes you on the hero's journey, kind of explains what all that is. But it also lets you develop character cards. So when you come up with okay, for example, my story about Anne Boleyn, we know how her story ends. So I can start plotting out her card. And then who's her friend, who's her hero, and we're hearing about her life from that point of view, is Robert. He's going to be somebody who is not necessarily very rich, but he's going to be involved in her life. She kind of helps him gain status as a teenager before she returns to England. In this, so that's we know kind of how her character is going to progress. She eventually falls for Henry VIII, things like that. So we're going to hear about her life, but from Robert's point of view, sort of a narrative. So that I haven't plotted out, and that will require me to plot it out because I'm also going to need to research some medieval history. How did people gain status? How did people move up into more respectable positions when they were people of no status? They were just regular peasants. What kind of luck? How could they fall into being more involved in a royalty's life? So there are those things that will take a plotter's point of view, a plotter's narrative. Each step along the way is going to be figured out. The book advantages helps you avoid writer's block. You know where the story is going. You have a clear roadmap. It also minimizes plot holes because you can pick those things up as you go along. Makes kind of more efficient editing because you have something to go by. You have that outline that you developed. Disadvantages, you can get into this rigid mentality of like, oh my God, no, that's not where the story is going to go. So I'm not going to let it go there. There's more time investment up front before you actually start writing. And that's taking time to develop the characters, develop their cards. It's also taking time to plan each step along the way, how the plot's going to go, how it's going to unfold. And then you may end up writing something that is entirely too long. And so that's sort of the disadvantages. Me, the first book, Rod Hawks, I have written that kind of from a Pantsers approach. I didn't know about these types when I started writing. But with the Pantser, kind of the advantages is the story unfolds the way the reader wants it to, the way the writer wants it to. Because what I did is I just sat down and probably the first 5 to 7 chapters, I just pounded out. And then I put it away for a while. Life got busy. I'm a graduate student, so things kind of got a little murky. And then I dove back into it again. And since I dove back into it, I pounded out like 25 more chapters fairly quickly. I had a direction in my brain. But what I found as a disadvantage is I had characters that I didn't develop. I had relationships that I wanted to happen because I saw them happening, but they didn't develop in a logical way. So my mother-in-law, who's my editor right now, she's as she wrote the story, she's like, "Hey, you got 2 people meeting up, but you didn't tell about their relationship beforehand and why they would come together for this particular thing." So there are things like that. It's also got the risk of more extensive rewrites. That's probably why I'm very much into this very long editing process, which is why I haven't made videos about the storyline. There's the risk of it becoming an abandoned project because you feel like there's a finality to it. You just wrote it all out there and it's done. But now the work is there. What I've discovered is I have went back and started plotting a little bit. I have started kind of maneuvering my way through it, going, okay, I'm going to have to plot out each chapter now, which is what a plotter does, in order for this chapter to have a logical conclusion. So that it, maybe conclusion is not the right word, so that it progresses logically. And then also one of the disadvantages, and I've seen this as I've been editing, has been there's an uneven pacing. There's times it goes really quick. And then there are scenes that get very drawn out because I felt it was important to draw them out. So some of the chapters were really short, some of them were a little bit longer. So I've seen the advantages and disadvantages from my own point of view, and everything you find online about that is pretty much correct. That's been my experience. So the third type is what's called the Planster, and this is sort of a hybrid approach. It combines some structure and some spontaneity with the flexibility and narration. Um, it has the potential for stronger stories that are more that mesh really well, that conclude very well. It's like one of the advantages is it allows you to be less rigid than with the plotter approach. You can be a little more spontaneous and you can write. What I've done in the other book that have started is a book called The Coin. That's its working title right now. It's based on some real life events. I knew how I wanted that piece to go. So I'm sort of writing, having used all 3 of these approaches. Because with the Planster approach, what I had done is there's some structure now, but there wasn't in the beginning. It was very spontaneous. It was an idea that I needed to flush out and move forward with. One of the disadvantages to the Planster approach is the potential for writer's block, which I can see because I haven't really plotted it out. There's some spontaneity to it, and I need to plot more, and that has stifled some of the creativity that I wanted to have with it. there's sort of this, it's the negative side of both worlds approach is what you'll see in some of the literature. Um, but what I've experienced with that has been a little bit of that, where do I get spontaneous and where do I need to plot out? Um, so I definitely have decided, weighing all these advantages and disadvantages of the three author types or the three approach types, is one, I have had to go back and do some plotting. The idea and knowing where the story was going to go in my brain was not enough. It's led to a lot of plot holes. Again, one of the disadvantages of the Panster approach. And it's led to some uneven character development, things like that. So what I would recommend moving forward for anybody who's new, even though there's a lot of work up front with the plotter approach, I would say take the plotter approach. I think that probably would have helped me. I would probably have less editing to do if I did that, and I would probably have a more robust story. Even though I've been told the story is good, it moves along great. Or I shouldn't say great, it moves along well. But I think there is a time that sometimes I wish I could go back and having plotted out the story more. So I'm kind of working on that now of how I want this to unfold, and trying to fix a lot of those plot holes, a lot of that superficial character development through this, plot, taking the Planster approach with it now, which was probably not the best thing to do either. So plot it out, take that time up front. My other piece of advice, based on my own experiences, would be take it and run with what you can run with, but try to stay true to that vision that you had, because that was the creative spark that led to this. For me, like I've said in other videos, that creative spark came to me spontaneously just sitting on a train. Wow, this would be a place where if somebody robbed a train, they could go off in any direction and not get caught. That was my just simple inspiration. So that's all I have for today. Hopefully that will give you all something to think about, those of you who are writers who follow me. Also be sure to check out my Eagles videos if you are a sports fan or a Philly sports fan. So like and subscribe. Please leave comments. I want to make these videos better. I want to get some feedback on the videos. I know sometimes they get a little draggy because of the way I'm recording right now, but that will allow me to, justify the expense of going out and buying better recording equipment, things like that. So like and subscribe, leave feedback, and I hope you all have a safe week.